Hey y'all, welcome to the next edition of the Mental Health Vlog. I want to, before I start on this topic, because it's kind of a heavy one, I want to thank everybody who's been supportive of not just these talks, but the Bonnet Chronicles. As you see my little logo up in the corner there, I do those every Friday night, and this Friday night we will be celebrating Black Women Excellence. So if that's not your thing, don't tune in. If it is, or if you want to learn more, please join me on Friday nights. I've been overwhelmed with the amount of support I've gotten for these vlogs because it's not easy talking about mental health struggles or your past or any of that, especially when you're of the age of you're not supposed to tell your business, as I've said plenty of times. So it really encourages me when I'm able to talk frankly and fully about some of my experiences and my past and current dealings with things. And today's topic is no, deviation of that. It's hard for people to understand it unless they live it. And when you're also living with days where lucidity isn't always a thing, it can be harder when you deal with bigotry. And why I decided to talk about bigotry is because it's a big part of my life. Growing up in New York City, you would think being in a city that is as multi-ethnic and having a multi-ethnic family that bigotry would be few and far between. But the first real dangerous run-in I had with bigotry was in my hometown of New York City, especially in Staten Island. And then you see lately this influx of people writing articles about how, Black Dems need to make more conservative friends, or we need safe spaces for the conservative way of life. And it's just frustrating. It really is, because you have people who really root their beliefs in dehumanizing people, whether it's by our gender, saying that our only place is to service and F them and carry their babies, our ethnicities, which they created when they created the society to put them at the top of the pyramid. They made sure that anybody with any kind of pigment feels less than. Your sexual identity and orientation. They want safe spaces to believe that we are less than them. These people who get just catered to by society because they set all the rules of society. Even in medicine, trying to get help for what I have, which is schizoaffective disorder, which I see plenty of white people who suffer from it, who, when you watch a lot of true crime like I do, you're constantly seeing people diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder whose only real problem is they failed to live up to standards that society heaped upon them and the pressure made them crack. So instead of channeling it towards something that could help themselves, they decided, I need to kill mommy and daddy. I need to murder somebody. That'll make me feel better. All the while realizing after they've done the deed that no, it doesn't help you. It doesn't make you feel better. Just like self-harm didn't help me or make me feel better. And that's the thing, I need people to understand that it is a spectrum. And while I can't dismiss that there are people with my disorder that do go out and hurt people for fun, those people were already damaged and already coddled by society anyway. Those of us who struggle with schizophrenia in any way, shape, or form, more than likely just don't want to deal with society, period, because it's exhausting. And then you add the fact that prejudice and bigotry on top of that, it makes it worse. When I was 14 years old, I had already survived a sexual assault. My mom moved us out of that neighborhood. And when I say us, basically just me, because my sister stayed with grandma for a bit. We lived in this nice little house off the side of Port Richmond. And life was pretty quiet for the first year. I would go to school, come home, do my homework, get the house clean, make dinner, all the stuff that my mom needed me to do because she was working and partying and doing whatever. I had a pretty set routine, and that first year of high school, despite the summer of hell that I had before it started, actually helped calm my mind. I didn't have to think about what happened to me. I just threw myself into school and getting it done. And this was after a turbulent summer where we thought we were going to be living with my dad, and that didn't pan out. It was a mess, but I finally thought I had something calm to move into and live in, and just deal with just me, my mom, and whoever she let live with us at the time, because that was a part of our lives too. You know, anybody who she could move in, she did from time to time. It was just that transient lifestyle that she decided would fit her lifestyle better than the stability that grandma and grandpa's house offered. But I digress. The house was nice. The neighborhood was quiet for the most part. We had kids that all went to high school, different high schools. I went to Wagner High School back then, so my freshman year, not senior year, freshman year was pretty much shaping up to be simple, strategic. Did my work, went home. I remember it was getting towards the summer, and there's something about summer in my life where all the chaos energy just builds, pulls, and explodes. I come home from school, and mind you, most New York blocks are pretty long, even residential housing blocks. So you walk home, you're walking down a block where your neighborhood has small businesses and homes. And I had this one neighbor who, unlike most of the people in our neighborhood, was always outside, was working on cars, had live geese. I remember making my friends laugh because one night I got home from sing practice. For those of you who don't know the New York school system, we had this performing arts thing called sing. So I got home one night from freshman sing practice, and his geese were out and scared the crap out of me with their loud honks. And I remember running home terrified because I didn't know if geese would attack people. But I never really interacted with the guy. Maybe every once in a while I may wave to be polite, but most of the time, home, school, that was my life, because I just did not want to think about the things that happened to me just a few weeks prior to that. I was in just shut it out of my mind and not focus on it. So I get home from school one day, and there's a bunch of white cops in my house, which always a red flag, because it's like, oh Lord, did my mom get busted? Did my cousins that she had staying up in the attic do something? What is gonna upheave my life now? I had it made. I had a set schedule. I was doing my own thing. I had the house to myself most nights because everybody was out doing them. I was basically raising myself. Why is this chaos coming? And I had a detective look at me and ask me, did I know the neighbor up the street? And I said, no, I don't really know him. I pass him by every once in a while coming home from school and stuff, but no, why? And they was like, you never interacted with him, you never said anything to him. No, why should I? He's a grown man and I'm a little girl, and I don't really talk to strange men anyway. And detective talked to my mom some more, then talked to me about how this man, who never interacted with us, never said boo to us most of the time, had a plot to toss Molotov cocktails into our home, burn our home out, because he assumed that he knew when we and the other family who lived, because it was a two-family house. We had the upstairs, they had the downstairs portion. I don't know if you know how two-family houses worked in New York, but even though it looked side by side, one house took the upstairs, one house took the lower level. That man who lived downstairs was a single black father of a young son. Very young, like in the months. He went to work most of the time and had a babysitter at his place. So this guy who just knew our path, who didn't want black people in his neighborhood, and granted, that house was probably the darkest people within the radius of that area of Port Richmond at the time, he decided to get with his friends, who turned him in, thank God, to hatch this plot to lob a whole bunch of Molotov cocktails into our house and burn it down, with the hopes that we wouldn't be in there. And because they turned him in, I don't know if he did actual jail time. I know he was arrested. I have a feeling he was convicted. It was such a blur back then. But the killing part is, this guy was a former NYPD detective. He worked for the police. He wore a badge that said protect and serve. And because he didn't want black people in his neighborhood. He didn't want a quiet young child who didn't bother him. It wasn't like I was the guy who lived across the way who blasted bagpipe records. Like, for real, I heard Amazing Grace and bagpipe music. It wasn't like we were the young, almost college age jock guys who every once in a while had parties. We were quiet people just doing our own thing, and just our presence was enough for this man to decide that he wanted to burn the house down than have black neighbors. That's how insidious racism is. And that is why I get very salty and upset when people say, oh, mental health, people with racism have mental health issues. That might be the case, but it's no excuse for their actions. I could have let that turn me into the monster that most people want you to be when you're constantly facing racism and sexism and all the bigotry that people just want to believe. That's my personal belief. I don't have to change. But it affects you in ways that you don't understand. I tend to feel so self-conscious now when I am the darkest person in the room. And it's because you never know if people are just trying to befriend you to say, hey, I'm not racist too. Or, I could use you to counter somebody who's calling me racist. And if you're doing that and you're watching this, you need to stop. Your friends are your friends, no matter how much melanin they have. And if you have to preface your friendship with their ethnicity or their belief system or their sexual identity, you are not friends with them for the right reasons. And I know it's hard to hear somebody say that, but it needs to be said. Because when you categorize the people in your life based on what they are, a lot of times you tend to use them when you're arguing for shit that you shouldn't. And it affects us. And it especially affects those of us who have bipolar disorder. When we're in a low, nothing's worse than wondering if the people who have your back are just using you as a token for when they want to make a point. Whether it's your relationship, whether it's your friendship, whether it's your family relation. Your family are not props. It's why I stopped putting out there anything about my family that pumped up just their ethnicity. I realized that I was falling into that trope because, especially for black women, we find ourselves gravitate into any crumb of acceptance in society. Any way to say, yes, I am special. There is something about me that you should love no matter what, because we're constantly vilified if we're not being the nurturer or the prim and proper feminine. Or as this one young lady that I seen on Twitter before I muted her nonsense, talking about black femininity is under fire. No, it's not. If you are confident in who you are, and I'm just sad that it took me over 40 years to get this way, it doesn't matter who thinks you're black enough. It doesn't matter how black you view yourself. Nobody can stop you from being you. And if you are a black geek and you're watching this, you are not less than because of your passions, because you enjoy what other cultures represent in entertainment. It took me years of not hiding my love of anime and manga and stuff like that, because I was afraid people would accuse me of wanting to be something I'm not. And it's like, no, you can appreciate other cultures and not appropriate other cultures. You can appreciate other cultures, and like, I wear my hair in these buns not only because they're cute, but because I've loved the style since I seen it in Street Fighter and Chun-Li. It doesn't mean that I love being black less. It means I love myself enough to where I can look a certain way and still be pro-black. I just feel like with mental health especially, you have to be careful on leaning two ways towards anything. Your first priority is making sure that you're healthy mentally. Doing the things you need to do, whether it's therapy and medicine, whether it's holistic stuff, because I'm not a big on holistic anymore, despite being a witch, because I do feel that a lot of people use holistic as an excuse for when things go wrong too. But if that works for you, if that keeps the voices at bay, if that keeps the moods leveled, Do what works for you. That's another thing a lot of people with mental health struggles don't understand. There is no one way to treat us because there's no one way to be us. Different factors in our life, especially bigotry, can affect how you handle mental health issues. And for me, I don't get comfortable around white doctors anymore. And I know that's not fair to a lot of white doctors who really want to help people, but you have made some of the worst moments of my mental health journeys, whether it's to question my intelligence, whether it's to tell me that, you know, just diet and exercise will help this. Dude, I have voices in my head constantly. My head is like a buzzing crowd most days. Non-lucid days come from real stress and lack of sleep. I didn't realize the connection until I got a female doctor who not only talked to me like a human being, but treated my issues like they were real issues. And I will say this, for white women doctors as well, you might get the occasional ones that ain't shit, but the few that I had for mental health actually listen. And I had one that explained to me after I had lost a ton of weight living with my godparents, because according to them, that would help too. That was like, no, you were really stressed out. You lost a lot of weight, and I'm glad you're happy about it. But there's a reason why you're freaking out so much. And without getting this help, it would be bad. So I need people to understand that bigotry plays such a hard role in getting help for mental health. Especially if you're a woman, especially if you're LGBT, especially since LGBT had classifications as mental health issues. And until our society starts recognizing that these issues, especially with mental health, are exacerbated, to use a big fancy word, by the way society holds on to bigotry, we're not going to get anywhere. Why is it people want to feel sorry for that old lady that you catch on TikTok or YouTube compilations yelling at somebody that they don't think belong in their country for mental health issues? But a person who's really struggling, who needs your understanding, who doesn't have the funding to get help, there's nothing you do for them. You're not amplifying them. You're not worried or sympathizing them. And it's because our society has conditioned ourselves to be the nanny and nurturer to these ancestral colonizers at times. And I know some people here and there, oh, you're spreading hate yourself. Whatever. That's another thing you learn after years of trying to speak frankly on bigotry in any way, shape, or form. There are always going to be those who try to turn your words against you. And if you think what I say makes me a bigot, that's your opinion. I'm not here to try to change that. I'm not here to try to change your mind on me. And why are you here listening to a black lady talk about her mental health anyway? I'm telling you, I've learned to not let people who just want to troll me, who want to dilute the message, get to me. But there are far too many people in positions of power with platforms that are pushing this gaslight and BS about how we need to open our doors and be good to people who aren't good to us, who dehumanize us, who stand in the way of getting help for people who need it because they would much rather us have sympathy for these devils. And I'm sick of it. There's a reason why you want safe space, and it's because your circles are shrinking. And your circles are shrinking because your mindset has been small and stayed small. And we are no longer in a day and age where elevating your needs over the rest of us is feasible. And you might find a few others who think like you, like, yeah, we need to elevate the white man's struggles. We should be able to tell women that they should only be there for us sexually and nothing else. We should tell minorities and other marginalized people that they should just accept that they need to be on bottom of us. What? I just don't understand. And I hate days like this where I'm lucid enough to really analyze how asinine that belief system is. And it's bad enough you get a few tokens out there who want to help you out because they think proximity to your nonsense is elevating themselves. But those of us who had to walk that walk, going to all white schools because our family thought that gave us some sort of affluent adjacency or whatever, adjacency, it doesn't help you. At the end of the day, those people are still calling you the same things they're calling me. And you need to find acceptance in yourself, because once you have self-worth, no matter what people say about you, no matter what people put out there about you, you know you. And you're not going to let anybody take that or diminish it or devalue it. That's why I tell people all the time, they want to talk about, well, we need more stronger black role models. Be your own role model. Be your own pillar. That's what we've always had to do. Be black your way. Because nobody can tell you how to be you. Too many of us fall into the tropes of needing to fit in, needing to be the black friend, or needing to be the light girl, or needing to be the pillar of femininity or purity. Stop. You are going to break yourself trying to bend yourself in ways to fit in to people who are never going to fully accept you because you don't accept yourself. And they will see that need of yours as a flaw to exploit. And it shouldn't have taken so many nervous breakdowns for me to get to this point, but I'm glad I am still here, because you get to a point where you really start seeing bullshit as bullshit. That's why I tell people, if you are struggling right now, I know that feeling of, why am I here? I don't want to be here. I am so tired of everything at times. I get that feeling, y'all. But believe me, you will get to this point that I'm at. It's never easy. I'm not going to lie to you and act like the dark days don't come. That would be a lie, and I'm not here to lie. I'm here to bring as much truth to mental health journeys as I can. But what I can tell you, honestly, is when you get to a certain age and you survive with these serious mental health things, you start really seeing the shit you've done just to get some semblance of acceptance for people who will never give you what you want, because that comes from inside. And I know it sounds like, oh, you're giving this weird self-help. No, I'm not. I'm just telling you like it is. When I stopped giving a fuck about what people thought about how I am, how I look, what I do, just do me, it got a lot better for me on this journey of keeping my lucidity, of keeping my moods in check well enough to where I'm not out there out of pocket all the time. And I know it's hard for people to understand that when you're going through it. So my best advice to you is, if you're struggling with your identity, if you are struggling to figure out who you are, learn that yourself. Don't seek validation from others, because that comes after you know who you are. It really is that simple. It's why I'm teaching my son that currently as I speak. Because I don't want to keep raising black children that root their whole worth and identity in other people's praise of them and other people's validation of them when they don't have that true self-worth anyway. And the moment somebody disparages them or critiques them, that's it. And that's a lot of us. It doesn't matter if you're a black person or not. So many of us are molded by society to get the acceptance of your peers before you even know who the heck you are. And that does a damn bad number on your mental health. So if this is you and you are struggling currently, whether you've dealt with bigotry, whether you're surrounded by people who don't listen to you, whether you're trying to be liked by everybody and finally realizing that that's not how this works. You might find a few people who genuinely like you for you, and you might not find anybody for years and years. But until you really like what you see in that mirror, whether other people do or not, you're never going to find people who are true to you, and it's going to be detrimental to any help you get for mental health struggles. Stop trying to find your validation in others. You are your most important champion. I'm about to wrap this up. I want to thank you again for all your support, for the growth that I keep seeing on this channel, for everybody who follows me on Twitter and Twitch. Thank you so much. I will be back next week with another one of these vlogs, and I'll see you soon.